Yo, what is going on? It is Roush, and I'd like to cordially welcome you to the third season of the Pokemon Speedruns Draft League. Now, I do want to quickly apologize. I'm not feeling the greatest right now. I've been a little bit under the weather for the last couple of weeks, as I was pretty much getting this ready. So I may sound a little bit stuffed up. I apologize. And also, I apologize. I am also hastily making this video, so please excuse the black bars at the top and bottom of the feed. That was semi-intentional, so I apologize. So, without further ado, now, in this third season, so far, we have had 18 people sign up, and out of that, I believe the total was 8 of you, or 9 of you, have never partaken in a draft league before, and 4 of you responded that you have no clue what a draft league even is. So before we get too deep into the season, I want you guys to know exactly what's going on, so that way if you feel like this isn't exactly the kind of thing for you, you have enough time to bow out before we actually get started. So this is going to take between 14 to 15 weeks. The draft is probably going to take about a week. That's how long it's taken in the past to get our slow drafts done. That's usually how long they take, because it just happens on a consistent basis. And you'll see what I mean when I say slow draft. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So it's about a week or two of the draft, and then about 12 weeks, well, exactly 12 weeks worth of matches, of battles, and then at the end of those 12 weeks, it'll be about a 4-week playoffs process. So depending on exactly how long it takes us to get the draft done, it could take even as long as 18 weeks. Now, you will be required to be active each and every week of this league in order for it to run smoothly. So if you feel like you can't be around for the entire time, I'd like to highly encourage you to go ahead and walk away, just so that it's easier for everybody else who is participating, especially because this year we're doing a divisional format as opposed to last time where we just did an overall. I think this will make things a little more fun. More people get to fight with each other. It just creates better camaraderie, being in divisions rather than just having the entire group fighting each other. And honestly, the only way for that to work properly is if everybody is active enough. But enough about disclaimers. Let's go ahead and talk about exactly what the hell is going on. What is a draft league? So, Pokemon Draft League is everybody is going to take turns. And let me go ahead and pull up our little draft page. Everybody's going to take turns picking Pokemon. So, if there's 16 teams, each round is going to comprise of 16 picks. So everybody is going to take a turn to pick, and then it'll roll over. So we'll have an initial draft list, which I will update. I'll get it out to you, don't worry. And then you'll do the opposite. So whoever was pick 16 is going to pick for pick 17. Whoever picked 15 is going to be pick 18, and so on and so forth until we get to the next round. Then the person who picked 32nd also gets the 33rd, and then it rolls back over. So we call that snake format. Is whoever picks last the previous round picks first the next round. So essentially they'll get 2 picks in a row. And based on your draft number is how you can figure out exactly what Pokemon you want to draft. Well, what exactly am I drafting? Let's go ahead and take a look at the rosters here for a second. So again, I'm just doing this on Google Docs, Google Sheets. Not anything too professional right now. Hope to get on with it. Eventually, I'll have all the teams and all the team names and the abbreviations and the coaches and everything's filled out here. But exactly what are we looking at? So what we're looking at is there are 5 different tiers of Pokemon. So we have Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, and Tier 5. You are required to draft 1 Tier 1 Pokemon, 1 Tier 2 Pokemon, 2 Tier 3 Pokemon, and we'll get into that a little bit later, 1 Tier 4 Pokemon, 1 Tier 5 Pokemon, 1 Mega, and then 4 free picks. Now, each tier has a set number of cap points assigned to it. And when you use your cap points, it'll take out of your total of 220. So let's pretend that I'm doing a draft. I have Mega Alakazam. That doesn't cost any cap points. However, if I were to go with a tier 2 Mega, say like Mega Aerodactyl, now I'm getting 20 points back, and it gets added onto your cap. You then get to use these points on your free picks. So let's say I want to draft a Swampert as a free pick. Swampert costs 50 points. So now I have 190 with which to make the rest of these 3 picks. So in other words, you can't let the total cap points get above this 220. But Roush, how do I know how much everything costs? Well, I got this nice little page for you right here. On tiers and availability is the title of the slot. So every Pokemon, every draft viable Pokemon is on this list. When it comes to drafting, if you look at this page, Pokemon when they're drafted, they'll turn red. So the red Mons means they're not available. Green means they are available. So because nobody's drafted yet, everything's available. So exactly what do these tier lists mean? Let me go ahead and explain. I went through a bit of a process. I had a couple of people along with me on this. But basically, we had a grading scale between, essentially between 2 and 10. We didn't bother with 1 because at that point, everything was already chosen. So, Pokemon that are in Tier 1 are, for the most part, ranks 9 or like 9 out of, or 9 or 10 out of 10, or just really, really high 8s. So for 10s, they're usually either really good defensive typing with a diverse move pool, they have great offensive typings, they have plenty of potential roles, and they have great stats for the most part. We call them Team Foundation characters. So we're talking Pokemon like Tapu Koko, Tapu Fini, you have Mew, Jirachi. They're all Pokemon that you really design a team around, and they can form many different cores, whether they be offensive or defensive. 9 out of 10, we call them multifaceted threats. They have great stat distributions and good to excellent move pools. Our code name for them are team carriers. So they're Mons that can like take over a battle and just win from there on out. Pokemon like Clefable, Pokemon like Garchomp, Heatran, Kyurem Black is a good one. Zapdos. Mons that can either offensively or defensively just control the entire battle. There are also a couple of 8s, which we call them can carries, but likely won't. A couple of them actually managed to sneak into Tier 1, because I wanted to have a good balance between Tier 1 and Tier 2. So we ended up with stuff like Infernape and Weavile. They're really excellent offensive Pokemon. You can build a team around them, but they're just kind of too good to be in Tier 2. So, other Pokemon that ended up in Tier 2 that are part of this 8 out of 10 group can carry but likely won't. We got stuff like Alakazam, Ferrothorn defensively. We put Toxapex in this group too. 7 out of 10, they're really solid Pokemon. They're pretty balanced defensively with decent support move pool or really good offensive prowess, but they usually are only from one side of the spectrum. In this, we include stuff like Breloom, stuff like Crawdaunt. They're pretty good, but they're kind of one-sided. But they're really good at what they do. Hawlucha's in this group too. Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen is up there. They have excellent move pools, but they're just not S tier type. They're like high B or low A. Tier 3 is where is our largest group outside of Tier 5, which is basically just the leftovers. But Tier 3s are going to be what you design your cores around. So we have stuff like solid Pokemon that can provide decent to good team support or offensive pressure. They usually have good to decent or decent to good move pools to do so. However, they usually have middling stats or some type of really glaring weakness. Pokemon in this group include Arcanine. We put Crobat in here. It's just a really good team support. Arcanine involves a lot of evokes a lot of offensive pressure. Stuff like Flygon can do a little bit of both, but usually they're just not as good. Then we also have good Pokemon in this group that can provide good to decent team support or offensive support. Most aren't going to sweep or stall out a whole team and have glaring weaknesses or many checks and counters. So stuff in this group include Cloyster. It can be used as either a good kind of support mon or a sweeper, but you're usually not going to see it do both, and it does have kind of a glaring weakness on the special side. Pokemon that are usually hard to, or easy to break apart. So stuff like, I think we put Heracross in this group. Did we put, yeah. So Heracross is in here. Nidoking is in here. Let's see, what was another one? Sharpedo. Sharpedo is another mon that was in the 5 group. Tier 4 Pokemon, we ended up having what we called an okay Pokemon tier. They're either really bulky or really offensive. Sometimes they have multiple low stats that hinder it from being an actual carry type or a solid core type mon, but they're usable, or are just oftentimes they're very predictable, as they really only have 1 or 2 great sets. So we have stuff like Aggron, which is a fantastic tank. I mean, well, pretty much this entire group falls under this category of they're pretty much one-sided, but they're useful at what they do. Lickilicky, great support mon, it's got Wish, but for the most part, it's just a tank. Rotom Mow, it belongs in this group. Smeargle, multifaceted support Pokemon, but it doesn't have the defenses that really keep it from being any higher than a tier 4. So these are all worth number of points you see up here. Tier 1's 90, Tier 2's 60, Tier 3's 50, 4 is 30, Tier 5 is 20 when it comes down to it. And basically, like I said earlier, Tier 5 is just the leftovers. Everything that didn't fall under any of the other categories just ends up here. A lot of not fully evolved Pokemon or really low tiers ended up here. Let's see. Got stuff like Crustle, Cryogonal. They're useful. It's just that they're not as good as the tier above it. So that's what you want to look at in terms of what kind of Pokemon you want to draft. You want to kind of build your team around your cap points. So something else to keep in mind when you're team building, the number one thing you want to do is build to your strengths. Like, build to what you know. And I like looking at Pokemon from 4 different team types. So you have stuff like, the most common type in drafts is balanced. They use defensive and offensive mons, usually in tandem, to provide good matchups for each other, or to clear out teams so that one breaker or sweeper type Pokemon is able to clean up weakened teams. They usually focus on multiple cores made up of either offensive or defensive support Pokemon. For the last season of the PSR Draft League, I tried to go for a balanced team. That's usually what I like going for. I had a couple of defensive cores. One of them, it was Arcanine, Swampert, and Virizion. Kind of an offensive core, but also bulky enough to make things work. And I was trying to clear the way for Raikou. Raikou was my number 1 sweeper. So stuff like that is kind of balanced. You have offensive and defensive mons alongside each other to make way for a single Pokemon to take over. Bulky offense and hyper offense are almost the same thing. They're designed to overpower opponents. However, hyper offense tends to go for a little more speed or 1 or 2 support mons to try and control the tide of a match. Hyper offense stuff include rain teams. So you have rain team plus Swiss swimmers. So you have something like Pelipper, Politoed to set the rain. Then you have maybe 1 Stealth Rocker, and then you have stuff like Mega Swampert, Kingdra, Ludicolo to help just plow through teams. You have offensive Volt Turn teams that focus on offensive momentum and immunities to take advantage of team weaknesses. So you have stuff like Tapu Koko is really good at this, especially because it sets electric terrain. So it can pivot into something like Rotom Wash. Usually you end up with a support mon like Gliscor, because it's a fast mon that gets access to U-turn. It's really bulky. Stuff like that. Or what I like to, another hyper offense type team is what I like to call Setup Murderer's Row. It's where you just keep throwing setup mons at the opponent, praying that everything falls at the same time. Usually you have like multiple dragons, Dragon Dance users, or other setup sweepers just all in a row to try and break each other's counters and just try and bash through the entire team. Alongside hyper offense, we have the bulky offense. They tend to act a similar way, but they tend to rely more on bulk than straight up setup. So you tend to have more tanks on the team. For instance, you can have something like Komodo. Komodo is usually really good on a bulky offensive team. You get stuff like Beware that can just destroy walls. And all these get used in tandem with, again, 1 or 2 support Pokemon. Stall is... It's a bad team type in my opinion, especially for draft, because teams... When you build for an opponent, you'll have you know exactly what your opponent can bring. So if you decide to go for a stall type route, there's no surprise involved. Like, your opponent knows what everything can do. They can tailor their team, their coverage, everything to hit specifically the Pokemon you're bringing. And this is where stall kind of has a problem, is, yeah, everything's really bulky and they support each other out very well, but the coverage, your opponent is going to have exactly the coverage to take on exactly your Pokemon. And they can come up with surprises that your stall Pokemon can't handle. So if you have stuff like Mega Sableye, Blissey, Skarm, your opponent's going to bring Fire-type moves, Fighting-type physical moves, and Fairy moves. Like, they're just gonna. So it's not like you have that kind of surprise edge. And in my opinion, stall is not a good archetype for a draft league because of the ability of your opponent to prepare for that specifically. So, build your draft around multiple cores is my suggestion to you. Common cores, wow, can't get that out, are based around type coverage. And one of the things that you could use for this type coverage, that is not the right part of the page. Let's go ahead and scroll down here. On your player page, I provided this automatic type matchup calculator. So when you add Pokemon to your team, you'll see, hey, now all of a sudden I have a weakness to, say, bug. So now I need like a good bug resist. Or now all of a sudden I've got all these resistances to dark. Alright, maybe I don't need an extra fairy type or something. You can use this chart to decide, hey, this is what my team needs a resistance to, or this is what I need to build my core around being able to take care of. So you could use stuff like this to help design your draft. Also, there are a bunch of little Pokemon rolls right here. So you have stuff like Hazard Setters. Pokemon who can set up Stealth Rocks, Spikes, Toxic Spikes, and Sticky Webs. I've already programmed so that as soon as you draft a Pokemon and add it to your roster, if it has any of these moves, it'll show up in this column. Hazard Clearers, Defog or Rapid Spin, Clerics, Wish, Heal Bell, Aromatherapy, other moves that heal teammates either status-wise or HP-wise. Momentum, usually it's in the form of... wow, excuse me. Usually it's in the form of Rapid Spin, or U-Turn, or Volt Switch, But Baton Pass will also show up here. Parting Shot will also show up here. I can't remember. I feel like there's one other one. I can't remember. Then you have priority move users. Stuff like Quick Attack, Extreme Speed, Bullet Punch, etc. is going to show up here. And then phasers. Believe it or not, phasing can be a tremendous tool when it comes to your draft battles. The ability to take a setup mon and completely neutralize it is amazing. So moves like Roar, Whirlwind, actually using Haze, just really important for team support. I highly recommend grabbing at least 2 different phasers on your team when you're building. So if you use all these tools that I've given you, you have everything in place to start securing a really good draft. And I hope you'll take advantage of these as we go along. So the schedules I've yet to cook up. Again, I'm still trying to finalize all the teams. So as soon as we get all the teams, I'll get you the draft order and the schedules. But as you can see, actually, ixnay that one. We're actually only going to do 12 weeks this year. So 12 weeks of battling. Last year we did 13 because it worked out because we had 14 people. But we're going to do completely different schedules this time. We're going to do a 12-week rotation. So, if you noticed on your player pages, you can trade Pokemon, or you can also do what I've labeled FA. It's called free agents. So any Pokemon that isn't drafted ends up in the free agent pool. And from there, you can add up to 3 Pokemon through free agency. And when you add them, you also have to drop a mon so that your roster stays at 11 and it follows all the rules of the rosters. So you got to keep in mind when you add or drop Pokemon. Same goes for when you're trading. You can trade up to 13 Pokemon with other players. However, no matter what you do, you have to have all the draft or the roster requirements satisfied. For instance, you can trade, this is just a dumb example, like a Gastrodon for a Tapu Koko. I don't know why on earth you would do that. Who would ever say yes to that trade? But you can do it. As long as neither of you goes over your draft points, your cap points, and neither of you goes... Ooh, that doesn't look great. Yeah, neither of you goes over your cap points, and all of your roster slots are filled. That's pretty much what it is. Like, you have your automatic Tier 1, your automatic Tier 2, 2 Tier 3s, Tier 4, Tier 5, etc. Everything needs to be filled when you trade or when you go through free agency. Now, something else to keep in mind. At the end of the draft, you're going to choose 2 Z-Mons, 2 Pokemon. You'll be able to use almost every Z-move that you want. There are a few battle clauses that we'll get to in just a minute. So you can declare 2 Z-Mons, and you can change your Z-Mon twice throughout the entire season. And I'll let you know when our transaction deadline happens. It'll probably be like week 8. Something like that, at the end of week 8. Basically when everyone's getting ready for playoffs. But until then, you'll only be able to change your Z-Mon twice. So if you trade away a Pokemon that was one of your Z-Crystal users, well, now you have to use one of your 2 Z picks to get another one. You don't have to, but I'd highly recommend it. Same goes, if you add somebody else's, they lose theirs, but that doesn't automatically make it yours. So again, you have to think wisely when you're making your trades, because you only have the 2 Z changes. I think that's the rules for mid-season transactions. Yes. Alright. So, how are we going to battle? There is a Pokemon Showdown server called Draft Frontier. I'm going to leave a link in the description of the video, as well as pinned in the Discord. so that you guys will know where to go for your matches. All it takes is a Showdown account. That's all that matters. But the battles will have one-hit KO clause. You're not allowed using one-hit KO moves. Species clause. You have to bring 6 different species of Pokemon. You can't just say, hey, I just want to bring 6 of my tier 1 Mon. No, you actually need a legitimate team of 6. No evasion clause. No evasion boosting or accuracy lowering abilities or moves. So you can't bring Sand Attack, you can't do Double Team, can't do stuff like Sand Veil. And as a result of that, Omni Z boosting moves are banned because they boost your evasion. So no Z clanging scales, no extreme Evo boost EVs, no Z happy hour Jirachis or whatever, Z celebrate, all that kind of stuff. That's banned because it falls under the evasion clause. There is a limited baton pass clause. Now what I mean by this, although it's an uncontrollable clause for the simulator, we are having to do self-police. Keep in mind, every battle replay gets saved and watched. So if you break any of the rules, I'll know about it, we'll know about it. You can only use 1 Pokemon per week to have the move Baton Pass. But when you give it the move Baton Pass, you are not allowed to have any speed boosting moves or abilities. So you can't have Baton Pass Flame Charge, you can't have Speed Boost Baton Pass Ninjask or Scolipede, you can't have Agility Baton Pass Zapdos. You can't do that. You can't pass speed. You can have Speed Boost on a Pokemon, you just can't have Baton Pass on it at the same time. And for that we call the Limited Baton Pass clause. Let's see. Based on the schedules, you will have 1 week to complete your matches. This schedule is going to change dramatically because this isn't right. We're not starting in March. We're actually going to start, hopefully by the end of January. Hopefully I wanted to say we were going to start around the 20th for our battles. That's kind of a good goal for me, is getting started around the 20th. But basically, as soon as the draft is over, I'm going to set the weeks and we're going to take off. And every week I plan on having like a little weekly recap video, like I did last season, except I plan to make it a little better. I also plan on doing a little draft overview and analysis. Maybe have a couple of people come in and help judge different people's drafts, different people's teams. So we'll try and have some more analysis for you guys, just in case you find it more fun. And again, I expect and I hope that you guys will have a lot of fun. It took a lot of time getting this stuff together last year, so this year was a little easier on me, but hopefully this works all the same. I can't wait to see what this season holds and brings. Y'all have fun. Roush is out. Peace.